The music drifted from the grand ballroom of Maplewood Inn, the only banquet hall in our little town in Ohio. It was the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and a violin that played far too sweet for the bitterness in my chest. Me. I sat in the dim kitchen at the back, my hands folded on my lap, like a stranger waiting for scraps. My name is Margaret Hayes, though most call me Maggie. I turned 63 this spring. My daughter, my only child, was getting married tonight. And I was not allowed to be there. Not because I was late. Not because there wasn't room. But because she had looked at me with those eyes, once so full of love, and whispered words I can never forget. Mom, please. Don't come to my wedding. You'll only embarrass me. I can't tell you how it feels to hear that. It was as if 30 years of sacrifice, every winter coat I wore until it frayed, every second job I worked to buy her schoolbooks, every prayer whispered over her sleeping head, just crumbled. Like dust. Like I had been a ghost all along. The chair beneath me wobbled and the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. I smoothed the skirt of my faded blue dress, the same one I had worn to church Easter Sunday 5 years ago. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't new. But it was the best I had. He hated that. He hated me for that. Mom, can't you try harder? You'll make me look bad in front of his family. That's what Emily, my daughter, my pride, my heart, had said the week before. Her fiancé, Michael Turner, shifted awkwardly beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder, polished and perfect. I smiled then, though my cheeks burned. I promised I'd see what I could do. But promises don't stretch a pension check. Promises don't erase decades of poverty. A burst of laughter erupted outside. I heard Emily's voice among them, bright, clear, eager. I closed my eyes, and for a heartbeat she was 5 again, running barefoot through our yard in Maplewood, dandelions tangled in her curls. She'd grabbed my hand and chanted, "Me and Mommy forever." Forever. What happened to forever? A young waitress pushed through the kitchen door, balancing a tray of champagne. She startled when she saw me sitting there alone. "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize anyone was back here." I forced a smile. "It's all right. Go on." She lingered for a second, pity softening her eyes, then slipped out again. The door swung shut and I was alone. Maybe you wonder why I didn't fight. Why I didn't march into that ballroom and sit where a mother belongs. I've asked myself that too. But when your own child tells you that you're not wanted, sometimes the only thing left to do is vanish. Or so I thought. Because tonight, under the lights of Maplewood Inn, secrets would be revealed, and the life I thought I knew would unravel piece by piece. Before I continue, let me ask you, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a small town like mine, or maybe a big city far away? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know. And if you want to follow every chapter of my story, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Because what happened next, you won't want to miss that. I sat there a long while listening. Each burst of laughter from the hall was a reminder. She was out there starting a new life, and I was shut away like a secret too shameful to show. The sound of clinking glasses carried through the wall, followed by the MC's voice announcing the first toast. I imagined Emily's cheeks glowing under the chandeliers, Michael's proud smile as he lifted his glass. I imagined his family, the Turners, wealthy, refined, watching closely. And I imagined Emily glancing toward the back doors, silently relieved I wasn't there. It would be easier if she had shouted at me, if she had cursed me or told me she hated me. But she hadn't. She had spoken quietly, almost gently, like she was ashamed, not of what she said, but of me. That quiet shame cut deeper than anger ever could. I reached into my purse and touched the small box I'd hidden there. The paper was worn from being folded and unfolded too many times. Inside was the locket I'd saved for her, a silver heart with a tiny photo of us together when she was 3. It wasn't worth much, but it was all I had. For weeks I had imagined placing it around her neck before she walked down the aisle. A mother's blessing, a reminder of where she came from. Now it sat cold in my hands, unwanted. The kitchen clock ticked, each second dragging. I wondered if I should leave. Slip out into the night, walk the 3 blocks home to my empty house and pretend none of this had happened. But something kept me there. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe it was fear, that if I walked away now, Emily would never look for me again. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. Memories pressed in from every corner. Emily's first day of school, clutching my hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her high school graduation when I sat in the back row because I couldn't afford a nicer dress. Her college acceptance letter, stained with the tears I tried to hide because I didn't know how I would pay for it. Every victory of hers had been a battle for me. And yet she believed I was the embarrassment. The music outside shifted, the slow melody of the first dance. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the ache there. I should have been out on that floor watching her glide across the room in her white gown, clapping through my tears. Instead, I sat in the dark, a ghost at my own child's wedding. But here is the truth. Sometimes silence is not the end. Sometimes what is hidden in the quiet corners breaks open louder than the music itself. Because before that night was over, a secret would surface, one that neither Emily nor Michael could keep buried. And when it did, every laugh, every toast, every perfect photograph would crumble. And I, the mother no one wanted, would be the only one who knew what to do. When you are a mother, the years pass differently. They are not counted by calendars but by milestones. First steps, first words, first broken hearts. For me, the years were measured by Emily. I was 29 when she was born, a winter baby, the snow piled high against the windows of our tiny house on Sycamore Street in Maplewood, Ohio. Her father, Robert, held her only once before he left. He said the world was too small here, that he had bigger dreams. He never came back. So it was just me and Emily. I remember those first nights, rocking her in my arms while the wind howled outside, promising her things I wasn't sure I could deliver. "You'll never be alone," I whispered. "Not as long as I'm breathing." I worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses in the mornings, waitressing at night, so she could have what other kids had. Sometimes it meant I came home with aching feet, my uniform smelling of fried onions. But the moment I saw her sleeping face, all of it felt worth it. When she was 5, Emily used to follow me everywhere, her tiny hand always reaching for mine. One summer afternoon I found her in the yard, plucking dandelions. She braided them clumsily into a crown and placed it on my head. "You're the queen, Mommy," she said proudly. I laughed, tears stinging my eyes. For her, I could be a queen even in a faded apron and worn-out shoes. Back then it was me and Mommy forever. But children grow. And forever doesn't always last. By middle school, Emily began to notice the differences between us and the other families in Maplewood. The Turners lived up on the hill in a big colonial house with green shutters. The Millers drove shiny cars to church on Sunday. Me. I still pushed our old Chevy that coughed smoke at every stoplight. She asked once, her voice trembling with embarrassment, "Mom, can't you park farther away from the school? Everyone stares." I smiled, trying not to let it wound me. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever makes you comfortable." That was the first time I felt the distance. Small like a hairline crack. But cracks grow. High school widened it. Emily was bright. Oh, she was brilliant. Top of her class, captain of the debate team. She dreamed of college, of a world bigger than Maplewood. I encouraged it all. I wanted her to fly where I never could. But with each success I noticed the shift. Her clothes grew sharper, her tone cooler. When friends came over, she rushed me into the kitchen whispering, "Just stay out of sight, okay?" I told myself it was just teenage pride. That she still loved me even if she was ashamed of the threadbare curtains, the squeaky floorboards, the life I had scraped together. But sometimes at night, lying in bed, I wondered, was love enough if it wasn't wrapped in respect? The years spun faster after that. Emily earned a scholarship to Ohio State University. I cried the day we packed her bags, though I hid it behind a smile. She hugged me quickly, already distracted by the buzzing phone in her hand. "I'll call Mom. Don't worry." But the calls grew fewer. Visits became rare. And when she did come home, she carried herself differently, like the house was smaller, like I was smaller. Then she met Michael Turner. I still remember the first time he came by, tall, polished, every inch his father's son. The Turners had money, generations of it. He shook my hand politely but looked around the house like he was measuring its flaws. That night, Emily cornered me in the kitchen. "Mom, please don't say too much. Just let me handle it. They're not used to all this." All this. He meant me. I should have said something then. I should have reminded her of every night I went without so she could have enough. But I didn't. Because love makes you silent. And fear of losing that love makes you smaller than you ever thought you could be. Sometimes I think about the old swing in our yard, rusted now, the ropes frayed. Emily used to beg me to push her higher, higher, until I feared she'd fly right off. Maybe she did. Maybe one day she swung so high she slipped from my hands and I never got her back. But as I sat in the kitchen of Maplewood Inn on her wedding night, listening to the celebration I wasn't allowed to join, I realized something. Maybe the distance between us wasn't just pride or shame. Maybe it was a secret I hadn't uncovered yet. And that secret would change everything. The night air outside the kitchen window smelled of lilacs and rain. I opened the small pane just enough to breathe, the coolness brushing against my flushed cheeks. The music in the ballroom had shifted, quieter now like the storm before thunder. Somewhere, a microphone screeched, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. I thought about leaving again. Walking home through Maplewood's quiet streets, slipping into my empty house, pretending none of this humiliation had ever happened. But something stopped me. A voice. It was Emily's. Muffled at first, then sharper as the back hallway door creaked open. "Michael, please, don't say that here. Someone might hear." I froze. His voice followed, smooth and clipped, the way men with money learn to speak. "Relax. They're all inside. Your mother's the only one unaccounted for and she won't come near us." My breath caught. I pressed myself closer to the door, shame and curiosity fighting inside me. "I told you we'll figure it out after the wedding," Emily whispered. Her tone wasn't the bright, eager one she used in the ballroom. This one was strained. Afraid. Michael's reply was colder. "No, Emily. We need to deal with it now." My father asked again this morning, "Does she know or doesn't she?" There was silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against my ribs. Then Emily's voice, low and trembling. "She doesn't know. And she never will. I won't let her ruin this for me." The hallway fell quiet again, the shuffle of their shoes fading back toward the glow of the ballroom. But their words remained, echoing. "She doesn't know. She never will." And who was she? My stomach twisted. They couldn't mean me, could they? What secret did I not know? I sank back into the chair, the old wood creaking beneath me. My hands trembled so badly the locket in my purse rattled. It was one thing to be unwanted. It was another to realize there was more at play, that my daughter might be keeping something from me, something dangerous enough to hide on her wedding day. I thought back to Robert, Emily's father, the man who had walked out before she could speak his name. He was a liar too, always disappearing, always chasing something brighter. Had she inherited that? Or had she simply learned from watching me that hiding was easier than facing the truth? The band struck up again, louder this time, pulling me out of my thoughts. The party roared back to life. Laughter spilled through the walls like waves against stone. But my mind was no longer on the wedding. It was on Emily's voice and the shadow behind her words. Because if there was one thing I knew after 63 years of living, it was this. Secrets never stay buried. And the one my daughter carried tonight would not only break her world, might just break mine too. The party roared on as if nothing in the world could shatter it. From the kitchen I could hear the band playing a song I didn't recognize. Something elegant, expensive. Glasses clinked, shoes tapped across the polished floor, and laughter rolled like thunder through the walls. But my ears kept replaying only one line. "She doesn't know. And she never will." I stayed seated for a long while, my palms damp against the table, my breath shallow. Every mother has doubts, fears that her child is slipping away. But this was different. There was a secret. And it had claws. The door swung open again and I straightened quickly. A tall man stepped into the kitchen, his tuxedo pressed sharp, his silver hair gleaming under the dim light. I knew him at once. Richard Turner. Michael's father. The kind of man who owned half of Maplewood, the kind of man people lowered their voices around. He glanced at me, surprised for only a second before his face smoothed into polite indifference. "Well," he said, his voice low and controlled, "I didn't realize this room was occupied." I rose slightly, unsure if I should curtsy like some servant. "I was just resting." His eyes narrowed, and in that single look I understood everything. He knew who I was. He knew I wasn't supposed to be there. "Of course," he murmured, adjusting his cufflinks. "You'll keep to yourself then. That's best for everyone." And just like that he was gone. I sat down hard, my knees weak. Best for everyone. What did he mean? I'd worked my whole life to keep Emily safe, and now I was being told, in that polished, quiet voice, that my silence was necessary. Was this what Emily had meant? That she couldn't let me ruin things? The kitchen felt colder now. The walls seemed to lean closer as if pressing secrets into my ears. I reached for the locket again, gripping it until the edges dug into my palm. If Richard Turner thought I would stay quiet forever, he didn't know me. The music outside shifted once more, softer this time. A toast was being made. I heard Michael's voice, smooth, steady, as he thanked his parents, praised his bride, spoke of futures and promises. Then came Emily's voice. Bright. Perfect. She laughed, she cried, she thanked everyone who made this day possible. But not me. Never me. I leaned closer to the door, my heart aching with a mix of pride and grief. She sounded so grown, so radiant. But beneath the polish I could hear the strain. My Emily was hiding something. And she was doing it so well that no one else could see. No one but me. That night, sitting in the shadows of Maplewood Inn, I made myself a promise. I would not leave. Not yet. I would stay until I knew the truth. Whatever it was that tied my daughter to the Turners with chains she couldn't break. Because sometimes, even when your child pushes you away, a mother has to fight harder. And I had fought all my life. The hours stretched long inside that kitchen. The music rose, then fell, the party ebbing and flowing like the tide. I sat rigid, listening, my body present but my thoughts miles away. Richard Turner's words clung to me like smoke. Keep to yourself. That's best for everyone. Best for everyone, except me. Except the mother who had given everything. It was near midnight when the hallway grew quiet. The band had taken a break, the chatter softened to a hum. I leaned back, weary, when I heard the faint scrape of paper under the kitchen door. I startled, looking down. A letter. The envelope was plain, cream-colored, my name written across it in hurried script. Maggie. No one called me that except people who had known me long before. My chest tightened as I reached for it. The flap tore easily, and inside was a single folded sheet. My hands shook as I opened it. She doesn't know the truth about her father. Don't let the Turners take her before she learns. There was no signature. Only a smudge of ink at the bottom, as if the writer had hesitated before finishing. I read it once. Twice. My heart thudded so loud I thought it might burst from my chest. Her father. Robert. For 30 years I had lived with the story that he left us. Too restless, too selfish to stay. That was the wound Emily had carried all her life, the excuse for every absence, every ache. But what if it wasn't the truth? What if the Turners knew more about Robert than I ever had? I pressed the letter to my chest, my mind spinning. Could this be a cruel trick? A way to unsettle me, to keep me quiet while Emily was tied tighter to Michael's family? Or was it mercy? Someone slipping me the truth before it was too late? Through the thin wall, I heard Emily's laughter again, brittle at the edges. My daughter, standing at the altar of her new life, not knowing the shadow that stretched behind her. I wanted to run to her, to grab her hand, to say, Emily, there are things you don't understand. There are truths I never knew. But I stayed. Because this secret, whatever it was, would crush her if dropped carelessly. I had to be sure. I folded the letter, slid it deep into my purse beside the locket. 2 objects side by side. A mother's love and a stranger's warning. And I knew in that moment that I would not leave Maplewood Inn until I uncovered the truth. The ballroom erupted again. Music, cheers, the start of another dance. But all I could hear was the echo of Robert's absence and the whisper of the letter. Don't let the Turners take her before she learns. I hardly slept that night. The letter lay in my purse like a living thing, burning against the fabric. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert's face. Or rather, the face I remembered, blurred with time. The soft brown hair that fell into his eyes. The laugh that could charm anyone. The promises that melted like snow in spring. For 30 years I told Emily the same story. Your father left because he was restless. Because he wasn't ready. But what if that was never the story at all? By morning the sun rose sharp and bright over Maplewood. The wedding had ended, the inn had emptied, but the questions remained. I walked home through the quiet streets, the soles of my shoes slapping against cracked sidewalks. The houses of Maplewood seemed to watch me, windows like eyes, blinds half drawn. People here remembered. They always remembered. At the corner store, Mrs. Jenkins was already sweeping her porch. She looked up, surprised. Maggie Hayes, she called. Weren't you at the wedding last night? I forced a smile. I was nearby. She tilted her head, her broom pausing midair. Funny thing. Saw someone slipping around the back of the inn just before midnight. A man in a dark coat. Didn't recognize him. A chill ran through me. Could that have been the person who left the letter? I thanked her quickly and hurried on. At home, I spread the letter flat on the kitchen table. My hands traced the hurried script, searching for clues. The writing was familiar, too familiar, but I couldn't place it. The words haunted me. Don't let the Turners take her. Take her where? Take her how? That afternoon, Emily appeared at my door. She stood there in her white coat, hair swept back, the glow of a bride still clinging to her, though her smile was strained. "Mom," she said, "I wanted to check on you." I opened the door slowly, my heart torn. "You looked so beautiful," I whispered. Her eyes softened for a second, then hardened again. "I told you not to come. Did you stay?" I hesitated. The lie sat heavy on my tongue. "No, sweetheart. I went home." She studied me, suspicion flickering across her face. Then she sighed. "Good. It was better that way." I wanted to scream then. I wanted to grab her shoulders and shout, "Better for who? Better for you? For them? For the Turners?" Instead I bit my tongue. Because how could I tell her that while she danced under the chandeliers, a letter slid beneath my door, whispering of her father and the family she had just married into? When she left, I sat alone again, staring at the letter. Robert. The Turners. Emily. It was a knot, tangled and tight, and I was standing at the edge with only a frayed thread to pull. And I knew this much. If I didn't pull now, it would choke us all. That night, I returned to Maplewood Inn. The hall was dark, the tables empty, but a single light glowed in the office near the lobby. Through the window, I saw a man bent over a desk. An older man, shoulders hunched, glasses perched on his nose. I recognized him, Samuel, the inn's caretaker. He'd worked there for decades, knew every corner, every guest who came and went. I stepped closer, my heart hammering. If anyone had seen the man who left that letter, it would be him. And as Samuel looked up, meeting my eyes through the glass, I saw something flicker there, recognition. As if he knew me. As if he knew Robert. As if he knew everything. Samuel looked up from his desk as if he had felt me before he saw me. His glasses caught the light, but it wasn't the reflection that made me pause. It was the way his expression shifted. Surprise, recognition, and then something heavier, almost like guilt. He rose slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from his vest. "Maggie Hayes," he said, his voice gravelly with age. "Haven't seen you in years." The sound of my maiden name on his tongue made my chest tighten. "Samuel," I whispered. "You remember me?" He gave a short laugh. "Hard to forget. You and Robert used to come through here often. Always sitting in the corner booth of the diner across the street. He'd talk too loud, make promises too big, and you'd just smile like he hung the moon." The mention of Robert's name felt like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples through me. I swallowed hard. "Samuel, I got something last night. A letter. Someone slipped it under the kitchen door. It said Robert had ties to the Turners." At that, his eyes darkened. He moved to the door, shut it gently, and turned the lock. "You shouldn't be asking about that," he said. "Not now. Not with your daughter tied to them." My pulse quickened. "Then it's true." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. Robert, he wasn't just restless. He wasn't just some dreamer who left. He owed the Turners more than money. He owed them loyalty. And when he tried to walk away, Samuel's voice dropped lower. "Let's just say people who cross the Turners don't usually get to walk far." The room seemed to tilt. For 30 years, I had lived with the ache of abandonment, telling myself Robert chose to leave me and Emily. But what if he hadn't chosen at all? My fingers trembled against the purse at my side, brushing the letter still folded within. "Does Emily know?" Samuel shook his head. "No. And if she did, she'd never be marrying into that family." I sank into the nearest chair, the old wood creaking beneath me. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling. Robert's absence wasn't a wound of betrayal. It was a wound carved by the Turners themselves. And now my daughter was their newest prize. The walk home from the inn felt longer than ever, as if Maplewood streets had stretched overnight. My shoes scuffed against the sidewalk, each step heavier with the weight of Samuel's words. Robert hadn't simply abandoned us. He had been tangled in the Turners' web. And now, Emily had married into the very family that might have destroyed him. Inside my little house on Sycamore Street, I lit a single lamp. The yellow glow revealed every scar of the place. Peeling wallpaper, sagging shelves, the rug worn thin from decades of footsteps. This house had held our entire story. My sacrifices, Emily's childhood, the years of waiting for calls that never came. I sat at the table and unfolded the letter again. The ink looked darker now, almost menacing. Don't let the Turners take her before she learns. Take her where? Into their fortune? Into their secrets? Into the same silence that had swallowed Robert? I pressed my forehead into my hands. If I told Emily, she would hate me for ruining her marriage. If I kept quiet, I might lose her to something far worse. The next day Emily came by again. She looked tired, the shine of the wedding already dulled. Her smile was brittle, like glass ready to crack. Mom, I just wanted to say, thank you for understanding. For not coming. She tried to laugh, but it caught in her throat. It would have been too much. Her words stung, but I bit them back. Instead, I asked gently, "Are you happy, Emily?" Her eyes flickered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Of course. Michael he's everything I dreamed of. But the way she said it, flat, rehearsed, made my stomach turn. I wanted to show her the letter, to spill everything Samuel had told me. But when I reached for my purse, her phone buzzed. She snatched it up, glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. "I have to go," she said quickly, shoving the phone into her pocket. "Michael's waiting." She kissed my cheek, barely a brush of lips, and hurried out the door. I stood frozen, the letter still hidden, my chance slipping away. Through the window I watched her walk down the street, her shoulders stiff, her steps too fast. She wasn't just avoiding me. She was running from something. That night, I sat by the window long after the lamps of Maplewood went dark. The silence pressed heavy around me, but my mind refused to rest. Robert. The Turners. The letter. Emily's pale face when she looked at her phone. The pieces didn't fit yet, but the picture was coming into view. And it was darker than I could have imagined. I thought of what Samuel had said. People who cross the Turners don't usually walk far. If Robert hadn't walked far, then where had he ended? And would Emily be next? 3 days passed before I saw Emily again. I told myself to be patient, to wait for her to come, but the silence gnawed at me. Each night I sat at the kitchen table with the letter in my hands, reading and rereading until the words blurred into shadows. On the 4th afternoon she appeared. She didn't knock, she never had to. She stepped inside, pale and restless, her eyes darting as if someone might have followed her. "Emily," I breathed, standing quickly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," she said too fast. "I just needed to see you." She tried to smile, but I noticed it then. The sleeve of her blouse pushed up just enough to reveal a dark bruise on her wrist. My stomach dropped. "Emily," I reached for her arm. "Who did this?" She pulled back sharply. "No one. I just bumped into a door." It was the same excuse I had heard from neighbors, friends, women who had hidden more than they dared to admit. I stared at her, my heart pounding. "Emily, please. You can tell me." Her eyes filled with panic. "Mom, you don't understand. Everything is fine." But her voice cracked on the word fine. She sank into the chair, her hands trembling. I set a cup of tea before her, though neither of us touched it. For a moment, the little girl she once was peeked through, tired, scared, searching for comfort. But just as quickly she shut it away. She lifted her chin, her face hardening. "Michael's family, they just expect a lot. They want things a certain way. I'll get used to it." "Expect a lot?" I whispered. "Emily, marriage isn't supposed to feel like prison." Her lips trembled, but she shook her head. "Mom, please, don't make this harder." I made my choice. I wanted to tell her everything then. The letter, Samuel's warning, Robert's ties to the Turners. But fear knotted my tongue. What if she thought I was lying to poison her against her husband? What if she walked away from me for good? So I stayed silent. And in that silence, Emily rose from the table, smoothed her sleeve down over the bruise, and kissed my cheek. "I'll be fine," she whispered again, though her eyes begged me to believe something neither of us did. Then she was gone. The house seemed emptier than ever after she left. I sat with the untouched tea, the letter still burning in my purse, and a terrible truth settled over me. I had lost Robert to the Turners 30 years ago. And now, unless I did something, I was about to lose Emily too. The bruise on Emily's wrist would not leave my mind. I saw it when I closed my eyes, when I boiled water for tea, when I folded the laundry alone in the quiet house. She had brushed it off as nothing, but the lie in her voice clung to me like smoke. By the third night I couldn't stand it any longer. I slipped the letter into my purse and walked back to Maplewood Inn. The place looked different after midnight. The chandeliers were dark, the tables stripped bare, the air heavy with the scent of spilled wine and extinguished candles. Only one light remained, glowing faintly in the caretaker's office. Samuel was there, hunched over his desk the same as before. He looked up when I stepped inside, and his expression told me he wasn't surprised. "I knew you'd be back," he said quietly. I pulled the letter from my purse and laid it on his desk. "Who sent this, Samuel? Was it you?" He studied it for a moment, then shook his head. "Not me. But I know the truth it points to." My throat tightened. "Tell me. Please." Samuel leaned back, folding his hands. "Robert wasn't just a dreamer, Maggie. He had debts. Real bad ones. Gambling, mostly, cards, horses, whatever he could get his hands on. He thought he was clever, thought he could win big and give you and Emily the life you deserved. But he lost. Again and again." I closed my eyes, shame and anger swirling together. "And the Turners? They covered him. Paid off what he couldn't. But that kind of help doesn't come free. They wanted loyalty. They wanted him to work for them. Quiet jobs, errands nobody would question. When he tried to pull away," Samuel's voice faltered. "He disappeared. Just like that. No note, no trace. One day he was here, the next he wasn't." I gripped the edge of the desk. "You think the Turners?" "I don't think, Maggie. I know. They made an example of him. And now your daughter." He let the words hang in the air. I pressed a hand to my chest, my breath ragged. 30 years of grief and guilt, believing Robert had chosen to abandon us. And now I learned he might never have had the choice at all. "And Emily?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What are they doing to her?" Samuel's eyes softened, but his words were grim. "She's theirs now. Through Michael. Through that marriage. They'll shape her, control her the same way they controlled Robert. Maybe not with debts, but with expectations, appearances, threats. Once you're in their circle, Maggie, you don't walk out." The room spun. I thought of the bruise on Emily's wrist, the way she had flinched from my touch, the pale look on her face when her phone buzzed. My daughter wasn't just ashamed of me. She was trapped. I rose slowly, clutching the back of the chair for balance. "I won't let them have her," I whispered. Samuel looked at me with pity. "Be careful. The Turners don't forgive. And they don't forget." But I had already lost Robert. I would not lose Emily. Not without a fight. And as I stepped back into the dark streets of Maplewood, one thought blazed through me. For the first time in 30 years I would uncover the truth, even if it destroyed us all. I didn't sleep that night. Samuel's words spun in my head, mingling with the sight of Emily's bruised wrist until they became one thing. A warning I could no longer ignore. By morning I knew what I had to do. I walked to Emily's house, the Turner estate on the hill. The iron gates loomed high, the gravel driveway lined with roses too perfect to be real. I felt out of place, like a weed in their manicured garden. Emily answered the door herself. She looked startled to see me, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, her blouse crisp, though her eyes were ringed with exhaustion. "Mom?" she said, glancing behind her as if to check if anyone was watching. "Why are you here?" I took her hand before she could pull away. "I need to talk to you, Emily. Please." She hesitated, then stepped aside. "5 minutes," she whispered. The living room was immaculate. White walls, polished floors, no trace of the girl who once scattered dandelions across my yard. I sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching the letter in my purse, my heart racing. "Emily, I need to tell you something about your father." Her body stiffened. "What about him?" "For years I told you he left because he didn't want us. But that's not the whole truth. He was involved with the Turners. He owed them, and when he tried to pull away, he disappeared." Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Where are you hearing this?" "Samuel. He was there, Emily. He saw." She cut me off, her voice sharp. "Samuel is an old man who drinks too much and gossips about things he doesn't understand." "Emily." "No." Her voice cracked, but she held her ground. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're trying to poison me against my husband. Against his family. On my wedding week." Tears stung my eyes. "I'm trying to save you." "I don't need saving." Her voice dropped lower, trembling now. You couldn't save Dad. And you can't control me. The words struck harder than a slap. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her the way I used to when storms scared her at night. But she turned away, her shoulders rigid. Please, Mom, she said, her voice breaking. Just let me live my life. Don't drag me into your fears. And then she walked out, leaving me alone in the immaculate silence of the Turner house. I sat there, shaking, the letter burning against my side. I had thought the truth would set her free. Instead, it had built another wall between us. But as I rose to leave, I caught sight of something on the side table. A small velvet box, half hidden beneath a stack of mail. Curiosity pulled me closer. I lifted the lid and froze. Inside was a ring. Not Emily's wedding band, but a man's ring, heavy gold, engraved with the initials R.H. Robert Hayes. My blood ran cold. What was my husband's ring doing in the house of the Turners? The ring sat heavy in my palm, its gold band glinting under the soft light. I turned it over once, twice, my fingers tracing the familiar engraving. R.H. Robert Hayes. For 30 years I had told myself it was gone with him, lost on the day he walked out. I never imagined I'd see it again, least of all here in the Turner house. My chest tightened. If this ring was here, then Robert had been here too. A voice startled me. What are you doing? I spun around. Richard Turner stood in the doorway, his sharp eyes fixed on the box in my hand. Heat rushed to my face. This was my husband's. He stepped forward slowly, his presence filling the room like a shadow. Careful, Mrs. Hayes. Curiosity can be dangerous. My grip on the ring tightened. Where did you get this? Richard's mouth curved into a thin smile. Robert made choices. Choices that had consequences. This ring was payment, you might say. A reminder of debts that can't be erased. I felt my knees weaken, but I held my ground. What did you do to him? Richard's eyes hardened. That's not a story you want to tell your daughter. She's happy now. Safe. Don't drag her into ghosts that no longer matter. Ghosts. That's what he called Robert. A man erased, folded neatly into the Turner legacy like a page torn from a book. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but footsteps echoed down the hall. Emily's voice carried, soft and uncertain. Dad? Is everything all right? Richard's expression shifted instantly, smooth as glass. He plucked the ring from my hand and slid it back into the velvet box. Everything's fine, sweetheart, he called, slipping the box into his pocket. Your mother was just leaving. Emily appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She looked between us, sensing tension, though she said nothing. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip a little too firm. See your mother out, Emily. She's had a long day. I opened my mouth, but no words came. The letter, the bruise, the ring, all the proof was there, yet I couldn't lay it before her without tearing her world apart. So I let her guide me to the door, her hand cool against mine. Please, Mom, she whispered, her eyes glistening. Don't make this harder. I wanted to tell her it was already harder than she could imagine. That her father's blood still stained the Turners' hands and she was bound to them now. But I stayed silent. Outside, the night air hit me like a slap. I stumbled down the steps, gripping the rail as if it could hold me upright. Robert's ring. In Richard Turner's pocket. The truth was no longer a whisper in a letter. It was solid, heavy, undeniable. And if Robert had paid with his life, what would the Turners demand from Emily? The wind cut sharp as I walked down the hill from the Turner estate, each gust clawing through my thin coat. My hands still tingled where the ring had rested, the weight of Robert's life pressed into my skin. For years I had told myself he was a coward, that he left because he didn't love us enough. The anger had been easier than the truth. But now I saw the chains clearly. Robert hadn't abandoned us. He had been swallowed by the Turners, piece by piece, until nothing was left but a ring in Richard's pocket. And Emily, my Emily, was next in line. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, the lamp throwing long shadows across the worn wood. The letter lay open before me, Samuel's words echoing in my ears. Once you're in their circle, Maggie, you don't walk out. But Emily would walk out. I would drag her out if I had to. The thought both terrified and steeled me. I was no fighter, no strategist. Just a mother with a tired body and an old house. But I had lost Robert. I would not lose Emily too. The next morning I returned to the inn. Samuel was sweeping the lobby floor, his broom dragging slow across the tiles. "You were right," I told him. My voice was hoarse. "Robert didn't leave. They took him. And now they've taken his ring like a trophy." Samuel's face darkened. "You saw it. In Richard's hand." He leaned on the broom, shoulders heavy. "Then you know what you're up against. The Turners don't just control money. They control people. Judges, banks, even the police. If you go after them, you'll be crushed." "Then what do I do?" I whispered. He looked at me, his eyes tired but kind. "The only weapon they fear is truth. But truth is dangerous, Maggie. Once you speak it, you can't take it back." That night I dreamed of Robert. He was standing at the end of the hallway, his face half in shadow. He reached for me, but before I could touch him, Richard Turner stepped between us, the ring gleaming on his finger. I woke with a start, gasping. And in the silence of the house, I made my decision. I would find out what happened to Robert. I would dig into the secrets the Turners had buried. And when I found the truth, I would put it in Emily's hands, even if it shattered her world. The next time I saw Emily, she was different. Her smile was thinner, her eyes restless, like she was carrying a secret too heavy to hold. We sat together at the kitchen table, the same one where I had once braided her hair before school. "Emily," I began softly, "are you safe with them?" "With him." Her eyes darted away. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" "Because I know what they did to your father." Her breath caught, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. For a moment she looked like the little girl who used to cling to me during thunderstorms. But then she shook her head fiercely. "Stop it, Mom. Stop digging. You'll only make things worse." Her voice broke, and before I could answer she fled out the door, leaving me with silence and the bitter taste of fear. I sank back in the chair, my heart pounding. He knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the ring, but she felt it in her bones. The Turners were not saviors. They were jailers. And I would not sit by and watch them lock my daughter away, even if it cost me everything. The day after Emily stormed out, I climbed into the attic of my little house on Sycamore Street. Dust swirled in the thin light, settling on the old boxes stacked against the rafters. It had been years since I touched any of Robert's things. For decades I told myself it was better not to remember, better to believe he had chosen to leave. But now the truth demanded I dig where it hurt most. I pulled down a box labeled bills and letters. The cardboard sagged with age, the tape peeling at the corners. Inside were envelopes yellowed with time, unpaid utility bills, postcards never mailed, scraps of Robert's handwriting. And at the very bottom, beneath a stack of receipts, I found it. A ledger. Robert's handwriting filled the pages, scrawled numbers and names, bets placed, debts tallied. The last few entries were marked with a single name, Turner. The ink was darker there, pressed into the paper as if his hand had been shaking. I sat back on my heels, the ledger trembling in my grip. Proof. Not gossip, not rumor. Proof that Robert had been bound to the Turners by debt. A sound startled me. Footsteps on the porch. I tucked the ledger under my arm and hurried down the attic stairs. Emily stood in the doorway, her face pale, eyes rimmed red. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Emily," I whispered, pulling her inside. "What happened?" She sank into the nearest chair, her hands twisting in her lap. "Michael's family. They're different when no one's watching. His father, he makes lists, rules. What I should wear, how I should speak, who I can see. And Michael, he just stands there. He doesn't stop him." Her voice cracked and she covered her face with her hands. "Mom, I don't know if I can live like this." I wanted to hold her, to tell her I could fix it all. But instead I laid the ledger on the table. "Emily," I said softly, "this was your father's. It shows his debts to the Turners. They didn't just pressure him, they owned him. And now they're doing the same to you." Her eyes widened, flicking over the pages. She shook her head, denial warring with fear. No, that can't be true. Dad left us." "He didn't." "He didn't leave," I whispered. "He was taken. And if we don't stop them, you'll be next." Silence filled the kitchen, broken only by the sound of Emily's uneven breathing. Finally, she whispered, "If this is true, then they'll never let me go." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then we'll have to make them." She looked at me, eyes brimming with tears. For the first time in years, she didn't pull away. But before either of us could speak again, her phone buzzed on the table. She snatched it up, glanced at the screen, and her face drained of color. "It's Michael," she whispered. Her hand trembled. "He knows I'm here." The air between us went still, charged with fear. I knew then that whatever grip the Turners had on Robert, they now had on Emily too. And unless I found a way to break it, history was about to repeat itself. The knock on my door came just as the sun slipped below the horizon. 3 sharp raps, too steady, too deliberate. My stomach clenched. Emily froze at the kitchen table, her phone still clutched in her hand. "Stay here," I whispered. I opened the door. Michael Turner stood on my porch, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. He was dressed sharp as ever, but his smile was cold, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen. "Mrs. Hayes," he said smoothly. "May I come in?" Before I could answer, he stepped past me, his men close behind. Emily jumped to her feet. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "Looking for you," he said, his voice even. "You didn't answer my calls." His gaze slid to the ledger on the table. He picked it up, flipping through the pages as if he had been expecting it. "This old thing," he murmured. "You shouldn't go digging in graves, Margaret. Some bones are better left buried." I stepped forward, anger rising in my chest. "You have no right to be here. That ledger belongs to Robert, and to Emily." Michael closed it with a snap. "Robert made his choices, and Emily has made hers. She's my fiancée. This," he waved a hand around the room, "is behind her now." Emily's voice trembled. "Michael, please, don't do this here." He turned to her, his expression softening only slightly. "Darling, you can't let your mother poison you against me. Against us. We're your family now." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, then at him, torn down the middle. I reached for her hand. "Emily, listen to me. Your father's blood is on their hands. You saw the ledger. You know what they did." Michael's jaw tightened. "Enough." The door creaked again. And then Richard Turner himself entered, his presence sucking the air from the room. "Margaret," he said smoothly, as if greeting an old friend. "You've been busy." His eyes fell on Emily. "Come, dear. You shouldn't be here. It gives people the wrong impression." Emily shook her head, whispering, "I don't want to go." Richard's smile faded. "This is not a choice." I stepped between them, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give out. "She's not yours to command," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "She's my daughter." Richard's eyes narrowed. "And Robert was my debtor. Do you really want Emily to inherit that legacy? Or would you rather she live in peace, cared for, provided for? Isn't that what every mother wants?" His words dripped with poison, each syllable pressing on the old guilt that had gnawed me for years. But I stood my ground. "I already lost one to you. I won't lose her too." Richard's expression hardened. He turned to his men. "Take the book. And if Mrs. Hayes won't stop meddling, remind her why people fear the Turners." Emily gasped, reaching for me, but Michael pulled her back. And in that moment I realized, this wasn't just a battle of secrets. It was war. And the Turners had just declared it. The 2 men moved toward me, their shadows stretching long across the kitchen floor. My breath caught, but I forced myself not to step back. I'd given ground to the Turners once before, with Robert. I wouldn't do it again. "Don't touch her," Emily cried, breaking free from Michael's grip. She darted between me and the men, her arms outstretched. "If you lay a hand on her, I swear." "Emily." Richard's voice was calm but steely. "Step aside." "No," she said, her voice shaking. "Not this time." For a flicker of a moment I saw it. The girl who used to stand barefoot in the yard, daring thunderstorms to strike her. Brave, stubborn mine. The men hesitated, glancing at Richard. He sighed, a trace of irritation breaking through his polished mask. "Fine. We'll do this another way." He nodded toward Michael. "Take her home." Michael's jaw clenched. He reached for Emily's wrist, but she jerked away. "Don't," she warned, her eyes blazing. "You promised me you'd never let them treat me like property. Is this what you meant, Michael? Standing here, watching them threaten my mother." Michael faltered, his face tightening. For the first time, doubt flickered in his expression. Richard's voice cut sharp through the tension. "Enough sentiment. Margaret, listen carefully. Stay out of Turner affairs. Burn the ledger. Forget the past. Or you'll regret it." I met his gaze, my body trembling but my voice steady. You already took Robert. If you think I'll hand over Emily, you're wrong. Something cold passed over Richard's face. He gave a slight nod. One of the men stepped forward, snatched the ledger from the table and shoved me hard against the wall. Pain shot up my shoulder, stealing my breath. "Mom!" Emily screamed, rushing to me. The men retreated quickly, the ledger clutched tight, following Richard as he strode out as if he owned the place. Michael lingered a moment longer, his eyes on Emily, his lips parting like he wanted to speak, but no words came. He turned and followed his father into the night. When the door slammed shut, silence pressed heavy on the room. Emily knelt beside me, her hands shaking as she touched my arm. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they'd do that." Tears stung my eyes, not from the pain but from the fear in her voice. "Now you see, Emily. Now you see who they really are." She nodded, tears spilling over. For the first time she didn't defend Michael. She didn't defend any of them. Instead she whispered, "What do we do now?" I pulled her close, my heart hammering. "We fight," I said. "We find the truth they're trying to bury. And we don't stop until everyone sees them for what they are." But even as I said it, a cold dread twisted in my chest. Because the Turners weren't just powerful. They were ruthless. And by standing against them I had put both our lives on the line. The night after the Turners stormed into my house, sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps, every whisper of wind like a warning. Emily lay awake in the spare bedroom, her breathing uneven, restless. At dawn I brewed coffee strong enough to burn. Emily shuffled into the kitchen, her eyes hollow but determined. She sat across from me, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "They'll never stop, Mom," she said quietly. "They took the ledger. They'll bury it." I reached into the drawer beside me. Not everything was in that book. From beneath a stack of faded linens, I pulled out a single folded sheet of paper, something I had torn from the ledger before Richard's men arrived. A page with Robert's handwriting, names and numbers scrawled in haste. At the bottom, one name circled twice: Judge William Carter. Emily's eyes widened. A judge. I nodded. If Robert was tied to him, then the Turners didn't just trap your father. They used the law to keep him there. Emily's hand trembled as she traced the name. "If we show this to someone, they'd crush it," I said. "Unless we find more. Unless we find someone who'll stand with us." The room fell into heavy silence until Emily whispered, "Samuel." I blinked. "The innkeeper?" She nodded. "He warned you. He knew about Dad. Maybe he knows more." I thought of Samuel's tired eyes, the way he spoke of the Turners with the weight of someone who'd seen too much. My chest tightened. Maybe you're right. That afternoon we drove to the inn. The place was quiet, the lobby dim. Samuel looked up from behind the counter, surprise flashing across his face when he saw Emily with me. "I told you to leave it alone, Margaret," he muttered. "You don't know what you're inviting." Emily stepped forward, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "They came into our house last night. They threatened my mom. They stole the ledger. If you know anything at all, we need it now." Samuel's gaze softened on her, as if seeing Robert in her features. Slowly, he set aside the papers he'd been sorting. "There's a box," he said finally. "Your father left it with me years ago. Said if anything happened, I'd know when to pass it on. I think that time's come." He led us into a back room, dust thick in the air. From beneath a loose floorboard he lifted a tin box, its metal cold and dented. My hands shook as he placed it before me. Inside were letters, receipts, scraps of evidence, threads of a web that stretched far beyond gambling debts. Names of bankers, land transfers, even donations to city officials, all tied back to the Turners. At the very bottom was a photo, Robert standing beside Richard Turner, a forced smile on his face, Richard's hand clamped heavy on his shoulder. Emily covered her mouth. "He wasn't free." "No," Samuel said grimly. "And neither are you unless you act." As we sifted through the papers, I didn't notice the figure standing just outside the cracked door until he spoke. "Mom." "Emily." We both looked up. Michael stood there, his face pale, his voice low. "I didn't know my father would go that far," he said. His eyes flicked to the box, then back to Emily. "But if you're digging, you need to know, you're not the only ones he's watching." Emily's breath caught. "Michael, what are you saying?" He stepped into the room, shutting the door behind him. His hands shook as he spoke. I'm saying if you don't move carefully, he'll destroy you. And I don't know if I can stop him. Michael stood in the dim back room, his breath shallow, his eyes darting to the box on the table. The tin seemed to burn between us as if the papers inside were alive, whispering truths that had been hidden for decades. Emily's voice cracked the silence. Michael, you knew? You knew your father was watching us. His jaw tightened. I didn't know he would come to your house. I didn't know he'd... He stopped himself, pressing a hand against the wall like he needed something solid to hold him up. But yes, he watches everyone. He always has. And once you're in his circle, there's no walking away. Samuel muttered under his breath, that's the Turner way. Emily stepped forward, her eyes fierce despite the tremble in her voice. Then leave with me, Michael. Walk away now. Don't let him control us like he controlled my father. Michael's face twisted, torn in two. You don't understand. He's not just a man. He has eyes everywhere. Banks, courts, even the police. If I turn against him, he'll ruin me. He'll ruin us both. He already has, I said sharply, my voice rising before I could stop it. You saw what he did in my home. He destroyed Robert, and now he's trying to chain Emily. How many more lives does he have to break before you admit the truth? Michael's gaze snapped to me, pain flashing across his features. You think I don't know? You think I don't wake up every night hearing the things he's done? But he's my father. And all my life I've been told loyalty to him is survival. Emily reached for his hand. Then choose, Michael. Loyalty or love. The room went still. Michael's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, his hand trembling in hers. For a heartbeat I thought he would choose us. I wanted to believe it. But then he pulled away, his eyes glassy. I can't, he whispered. Not yet. He turned to leave, but before stepping out he looked back at Emily. Hide that box. Whatever's in it, if my father finds out, he won't stop until you're both silenced. And I don't know if I'll be able to protect you. Then he was gone, the door creaking shut behind him, leaving the three of us in heavy silence. Emily's shoulders shook. He's already lost, isn't he? I pulled her close, though my own heart ached. No, baby. He's trapped. Just like your father was. But maybe we can free you both. Samuel leaned against the wall, his face grim. If you're going to fight Richard Turner, you'll need more than words and papers. You'll need someone who isn't afraid of him. Someone outside his reach. I looked at him, my pulse quickening. Do you know someone like that? His eyes met mine, heavy with meaning. Maybe. But if we bring them in, there's no turning back. The Turners won't just fight you in shadows anymore. They'll drag you into the light, and when they do, there'll be no mercy. Emily gripped my hand. Then we fight in the light. And for the first time I believed her. The morning after Michael's visit, the town felt different. Colder. Eyes lingered on me when I walked down Main Street, whispers trailed behind. At the bakery where I'd bought bread every Saturday for 20 years, Mrs. Green wouldn't meet my gaze. She slid the loaf across the counter as though my touch carried poison. By the time I reached home, a letter was already waiting in my mailbox. Thick cream paper, my name written in an elegant, practiced hand. Inside just 6 words. Meddle again and you'll bury her. Emily stood frozen as I showed it to her. Her lips trembled. Mom, they're turning the whole town against us. That evening, Samuel arrived at our doorstep. His hat pulled low, his voice grave. He's moving fast. Spreading stories, twisting truths. If you stay alone, he'll grind you down until there's nothing left. I crossed my arms. Then tell us. Who can stand against him? Samuel hesitated, then spoke a name I hadn't heard in years. Detective Laura Briggs. She used to work organized crime in the city. She pushed too close to the Turners once, lost her badge for it. But she didn't stop digging. Emily leaned forward, desperate. Where is she now? Samuel's eyes flicked to me, then back to Emily. On the edge of town. She runs a small horse ranch, keeps to herself. But if anyone still has a fire left to burn the Turners down, it's her. We drove out the next morning. The ranch sat lonely against rolling hills, fences weathered, the air sharp with hay and dust. Laura Briggs looked older than I remembered from the papers. Her hair streaked with gray, her stance wary as she spotted us approaching. What do you want? She asked, voice flat, eyes scanning us like suspects. I held out the torn ledger page, Robert's handwriting trembling in my grip. Proof. My husband's life. My daughter's future. And maybe the last chance you'll get to finish what you started. For a long moment Laura said nothing. Then with a sharp motion she took the paper, scanning it. Her eyes darkened. You realize, she said quietly, if I step back into this there's no walking away. Richard Turner will burn every bridge I've got left. He'll come for you too. Emily's voice broke the silence. He already has. Laura studied her, then me, then Samuel. At last she gave a bitter laugh. Well, looks like the fight finally came knocking again. She turned toward the barn. I've still got files, records, things I couldn't use before. If we put what you have together with what I've got, she looked back at us, her eyes narrowing with resolve. We might actually have a weapon. But even as hope flickered, I knew better than to think victory would come easy. Because back in town, Richard Turner was already pulling another string. The bank. By nightfall, I received a notice. The mortgage on my house, Robert's house, Emily's childhood home, was being called in, effective immediately. They weren't just after our silence. They were after everything. The foreclosure notice lay on the table like a death sentence. Emily stared at it, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. They can't just take our house, she whispered. It's ours. It's Dad's. I swallowed hard. Thinking, that's what power looks like. Laura Briggs leaned against the counter, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. Richard Turner isn't just threatening you anymore. He's cutting off every escape one by one. She opened a leather folder she had carried in from the barn. Inside were files, yellowed photos, and transcripts. These, she said, spreading them across the table, are records I gathered during my years as a detective. Bank transfers, shell companies, payoffs to judges and councilmen. They laughed me out of the precinct when I tried to take it higher. Said I was obsessed. But it was the Turners who made sure I never wore the badge again. Emily reached for one photo, her breath catching. It showed her father, Robert, sitting across a poker table. Behind him, blurred but unmistakable, Richard Turner's hand rested on his shoulder like a shackle. Laura tapped the image. Your husband wasn't a gambler, Margaret. He was bait. Richard needed someone clean, respectable, to funnel debts through. He owned Robert before Robert even knew he was playing. The words hit me like ice water. I had always suspected, but hearing it, seeing it in black and white, stole my breath. Samuel spoke for the first time in a long while. So what now? We sit here, let him strip Margaret's home, drag Emily into a wedding cage, and bury Robert twice over. Laura shook her head. No. We take this public. Quiet complaints don't work. Anonymous tips get buried. But if we put this in front of the right eyes at the right moment, he won't be able to smother it. Emily's voice trembled with urgency. How? He owns the newspapers, the judges, half the police. Laura's lips curled into a thin, sharp smile. Not everyone. The state attorney's office has been sniffing around corruption cases. If we drop this on their desk, loud enough, fast enough, they'll have to move. But Samuel looked uneasy. If Richard finds out before it lands, he won't wait. He'll strike first. And he won't bother with warnings this time. Silence fell heavy. Then Emily straightened, her face set with a fierceness I had only glimpsed before. Then we don't give him time. We strike first. Her words chilled me, not because of the danger but because of the fire in her eyes. For the first time she looked less like the daughter I'd raised and more like the woman this war was forcing her to become. That night Laura outlined the plan. The Turners are hosting a charity gala this weekend. Everyone with a title or a badge will be there. If we can slip these documents into the right hands in that room, Richard won't be able to bury it quietly. I felt my chest tighten. The gala. Public. Surrounded by Turner allies. You're asking us to walk straight into the lion's den. Laura met my gaze. Yes. Because sometimes, the only way to beat the lion is to drag him into the light. Later, when Emily and Samuel had gone to rest, I found myself alone with Laura. The farmhouse was quiet, shadows long across the kitchen walls. You really think this can work? I asked softly. Laura took a long sip from her coffee, her expression unreadable. I've been chasing Richard Turner most of my career. He wins because people fear him. But you, Margaret, you have something he can't control. I frowned. What's that? She leaned closer, her voice a low rasp. Your mother. And mothers don't stop. Her words struck something deep in me. For years I had let grief cage me, let fear silence me. But looking at Emily asleep on the couch, curled like the little girl I used to rock to sleep, I knew Laura was right. This wasn't about Robert anymore. This was about her. But even as resolve settled in my bones, headlights flared outside the window. A car idled at the end of the dirt road, its engine humming low. Laura stood, her hand instinctively reaching for the pistol at her hip. They're watching. The engine revved once, then twice before the car pulled away, taillights vanishing into the night. Emily stirred at the sound, sitting up, fear flashing in her eyes. Was that? I forced a calm I didn't feel. Yes. He knows we're moving. And in that moment I realized something. Richard Turner wasn't going to wait for us to come to him. He was already on his way. The Turner Foundation Gala glittered like a crown jewel of the town. Chandeliers dripped with light, violins sang from the corner of the ballroom, and women in silk gowns floated across polished marble. But beneath the perfume and champagne, the air was heavy, suffocating. Emily clutched my hand as we entered, her dress simple compared to the satin and jewels around us. Laura walked beside us, her file tucked neatly into a leather bag. Samuel had slipped in earlier, blending with the crowd. And at the far end of the room, Richard Turner stood like a king surveying his kingdom. His smile spread wide when his eyes found us, but it was a smile that cut, not welcomed. Well, well, he said, striding forward. The Hayes women. Couldn't resist the invitation, could you? Emily lifted her chin. We're not here to celebrate you. Richard's smile flickered just for an instant. Careful, girl. This is my house. And in my house you speak with respect. Laura stepped forward, her voice steady. Funny thing, Richard. This is also the people's house. The money that built these walls. Was it theirs or yours? His eyes narrowed. You. He chuckled darkly. Didn't I bury your career already? Not deep enough, Laura replied. The orchestra faltered slightly, sensing tension. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Guests shifted, eyes flicking between Richard and us. Then Samuel moved. From the back of the hall, he placed a sealed envelope into the hand of a man in a dark suit, the state attorney himself. The man glanced down, opened the folder, and paled. Richard saw. His smile collapsed into a snarl. You stupid, reckless. He lunged, but Michael was there, grabbing his father's arm. Stop, Michael said hoarsely. His face was ashen, his voice breaking. This ends tonight. Richard's fury turned on him. You dare defy me? Michael's grip tightened. I'm not your puppet. Not anymore. The room erupted, gasps, cameras flashing, murmurs swelling like a tide. The state attorney raised his hand, papers in his grasp. These are serious allegations, Mr. Turner. We'll need to discuss this. Richard's roar drowned him out. Lies. All of it. And then like a storm breaking, chaos fell. Richard shoved Michael aside, his fury unchained. Security rushed in, guests shrieked, the orchestra's strings screeched to silence. Through the chaos, Emily pressed close to me, whispering, We did it, Mom. We pulled him into the light. But even as she spoke, Richard's hand shot to his jacket. I saw the glint before anyone else. A pistol. Time slowed. Richard raised it not at me but at Emily. Then I'll take back what's mine, he spat. I moved without thought, my body driven only by the one truth Laura had spoken. Mothers don't stop. The shot cracked, deafening, splitting the air. Pain seared my side. My knees buckled. Emily screamed, catching me as I fell. The last thing I saw before darkness clouded my eyes was Michael, his own hands now on the pistol, wrenching it from his father with a cry that was half rage, half grief. And Richard Turner, the great man, dragged down in front of his kingdom, not by the law but by the truth he could no longer bury. When I woke later in the hospital, the world was hushed. Emily sat beside me, her hand warm in mine, her eyes red but shining. It's over, Mom, she whispered. They took him away. He'll never hurt us again. Tears slipped down my cheeks, both from the pain and the release. I touched her face, memorizing her in the pale light. Live Emily, I breathed. Live free. That's all I ever wanted. And as her hand tightened in mine, I felt Robert's presence in the room at last. Not broken, not lost, but finally at peace.